Well, President Biden has signed an executive order to enforce tighter rules on gun sellers, which moves the U.S. a little closer to what might be considered universal background checks. Here he is, arriving at Los Angeles a little earlier, and he made the announcement in the suburb of Monterey Park. That's a community, of course, that's been devastated by a mass shooting in January that claimed 11 lives and injured 9 other people.
Last year, after the mass shooting in Buffalo, New York, and Uvalde, Texas, I signed into law, after being both places, a bipartisan Safer Communities Act, most significant gun safety law in almost 30 years. That was in addition to me signing more executive actions to reduce gun violence than any of my predecessors at this point in their presidencies. Today, I'm announcing another executive order that will accelerate and intensify this work to save more lives more quickly. First, this executive order helps keep firearms out of dangerous hands, as I continue to call on Congress to require background checks for all firearm sales. And in the meantime, my executive order directs my Attorney General to take every lawful action possible to move us as close as we can to universal background checks without new legislation. It's just common sense to check whether someone is a felon, a domestic abuser, before they buy a gun.
Well, Miles Taylor was a former chief of staff at the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. He says Joe Biden is taking action himself because of the political polarization in Washington.
The fact that Biden is doing this by executive order is a tacit admission that the real meaty measures that could be done can't be passed because there is partisan gridlock in Washington. Now, look, the 2 big things that this executive order does, again, I said common sense measures because it bolsters background checks, which the majority of Americans approve of, and it bolsters what's called red flag laws, which makes it harder for individuals who've been deemed mentally unfit to get their hands on a weapon. But what this doesn't do is actually have any sort of massive increase on the problem that we're seeing in the United States of mass shootings. That would require another act of Congress, and there just isn't the political will because of the partisan extremism that we are seeing in Congress. And so, again, the fact that Biden's doing this by executive order is an admission at that frustration that they are seeing in Washington.
That was Miles Taylor there. Well, in other stories for you today, more than